Hi, everybody. Welcome, my friends, to live question period with David Krayden. What we're doing here for a second. Thanks for joining me today. Not too many clips to show you this morning. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, sorry about the sound during those statements, those SO31s member statements. I know you all wanted to hear about the hockey team in Baie-Comeau or the soccer team in Port La Prairie. I used to write those SO31s. That's what they're technically called. And it's quite funny because the MPs take them very seriously. So I'm sorry the sound cut off yesterday. I heard a lot of people say, no sound. Don't tell me there's no sound. There is sound. Somebody just said no sound. The sound is on. I'm gonna I'm gonna double check the sound right now. But why are you doing this to me? Yeah. All right, the sound is working. Yes, I'm just checking. Yes, so my sound is working. You're not listening to the SO31s yet. I want to have just a few things. So once again, apology. But the SO31s, these member statements, they actually trade them. Yes. If you have an SO30, because you wait your turn patiently to do your SO31, and if your day comes up, your number comes up, and you're not prepared or you're not going to be there, you can trade your SO31 with some other member so he or she can do theirs that day. And they take them very seriously. They actually have them printed out, put in these green folders, and sometimes framed, and they send them out to the people who are mentioned in them. So here I am shutting the sound off during the SO31s, not taking them seriously. Yeah, and I worked there for too many years for not many, several MPs, usually good ones, sometimes terrible ones. But anyway, welcome everybody. I'm going to show you a nice video in a minute, just short one. But before I do that, I know a lot of you also watch Redacted, and I'm on Redacted every week. We haven't taped anything yet this week because I've just been so busy. Clayton's been busy, and I'm waiting for the right story to do. It's always the outrage of the week from Canada. And so I try to be selective, try to get something that's always good. So we'll probably be doing something tomorrow, Thursday. But if you're watching Redacted, I'm sure you've noticed the stories and the guests that are talking about the potential for a nuclear war. Now, I'm ex-military. I was a public affairs officer for 14 years total. So I know the inside workings of the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces. And I know what talking points are all about. I know what it is to toe the party line, the government line when you're ordered to. I did that many times. That's why I'm an independent journalist today, because I don't have to take orders anymore from the media, from the government. Uh, I listen to you folks and see where you think I should be going, what you think I should be talking about. And that's about the only advice I take now. But all of those people who are out in the streets right now protesting Israel, we're protesting Hamas, we're supporting Hamas, supporting Palestine, supporting Israel. Get bloody real. We are potentially a week or so away from a nuclear war with Russia because France, the morons in France, starting with its President Macron, want a war with Russia. Joe Biden is so demented, he's so out of it, he doesn't know what he's doing. So you've got people like the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who is a over-promoted public affairs officer who's now running the State Department and running foreign policy. This guy's talking about sending troops to Ukraine to fight Russia. It's finally dawned on these people that not only is Ukraine losing, it's going to be a devastating loss. And they've known that for quite some time. But it's what has really dawned on them is that the public is finally starting to wake up to this fact. It's unavoidable now. Ukraine is on the verge of complete collapse. And they are actually telling us, stop sending the weapons because you're killing us. The longer you keep this war going, the more our graveyards fill up with the bodies of not just young men anymore, but young women and middle-aged men who are fighting this war. It's time to stop the war. But as Ukraine becomes closer and closer to defeat, NATO says, what are we going to do? We're going to have to intervene in a more direct way. And that means boots on the ground, as they like to say. And that means direct military ground forces. Now, I was in Bosnia, amongst other places, with NATO. I wrote the talking points for NATO and the operations we did. And I really believed in the organization in those days. Right now, it's an organization without a clear objective except to get more members and to act as a catalyst to start a nuclear war. That's all it's about. It doesn't have a valid military objective anymore. The Soviet Union is gone. The Cold War was over decades ago. But we continue to imagine NATO has a vital role in the world, and it does not. But when you're involved in a power structure like NATO, when you're in the hierarchy, when you're in the upper echelon, and you have a good job, and the organization keeps you wealthy, or at least very well paid, and very well positioned in power, it's difficult to wake up and say, hey, this organization is no longer needed. We don't need NATO anymore. In fact, it's become an impediment for world peace. It's become a reason we're drawing closer to nuclear war. It's difficult to come to that conclusion when you're at the top because you like the organization to continue. You have a vested interest in that organization continuing, even if it has no real reason to continue. And that's what we're facing right now with NATO. This is a tragedy. This is an absolute tragedy, and we need to do something about it. Now, before we go to question period, I want to show you a very inspirational moment from 1964 with one of my heroes, Ronald Reagan.
Now, one side in this campaign has been telling us that the issues of this election are the maintenance of peace and prosperity. The line has been used, we've never had it so good. But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a third of its national income. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share. And yet our government continues to spend $17 million a day more than the government takes in. We haven't balanced our budget 28 out of the last 34 years. We've raised our debt limit 3 times in the last 12 months. And now our national debt is 1.5 times bigger than all the combined debts of all the nations of the world. We have $15 billion in gold in our treasury. We don't own an ounce. Foreign dollar claims are $27.3 billion. And we've just had announced that the dollar of 1939 will now purchase 45 cents in its total value.
Now, people used to say at the time that Reagan was a warmonger and he was going to bring a nuclear war upon us. Of course, that was completely false. He was not a warmonger. He ended up being the man who ended the Cold War and forged peaceful relations with the Soviet Union, which was on its last legs. But that's what he did. That's his legacy. We were nowhere near a nuclear war in the 80s. There were lots of people out in the streets demonstrating and protesting about it. Where are they today? We're close to a nuclear war now because we have imbeciles in power who don't want peace. They want war. They want a nuclear war because they'd rather have a nuclear war than lose their grip on power. You know, this is the globalist agenda, but that doesn't mean we can't fight back. So don't worry about the war in the Middle East. We need to stop the war in Ukraine, and we need to have peace in the Middle East as well as Ukraine, because this is going to drive us to the precipice of catastrophe. In fact, we're already at the precipice of catastrophe. We could very well fall over the edge any week now. We are in a serious situation. I wanted to say that today because this is a platform. Maybe I'm not reaching millions of people, but I need to say what I need to say. I think it's very important. So I'm going to go to question period now. And we shouldn't have too many more member statements. And I promise I will not shut the sound off and forget to put it back on, which I have done once in a while. Other times, YouTube shuts it off for me. But thank you for your patience, your support. Please like the station if you can. Keep subscribing if you haven't subscribed. Resubscribe if you must. We have added like 300 subscribers in the last week or so. I needed to do that because YouTube was deleting my subscribers. It was suppressing my material. And I fought back because I said, to hell with you people. You're not going to keep me at a $20,000 subscriber plateau. like you do other stations. They do that. Yes, they do, including major media in this country. New media. Some of them get stuck in the low 20s and they never move up because YouTube says you're not going anywhere and they don't fight back. We're fighting back. You and I, we're fighting back. Thanks for watching today. And here we go.
To my friends from Shri Guru Ravidas Sabha on Gilly Avenue. Jabim.
The Honourable Member for Musky-Nejet, Témiscouata, Les Basques. Mr. Speaker, I would encourage my colleagues to pay more attention to their remarks than usual, because today science is watching. Researchers from across Canada have come to the Hill as part of the 4th annual Science Meets Parliament event. And invited by the Canadian Science Policy Centre, these leaders from the world of science and innovation have come to forge stronger ties with policymakers. It is clear that a mutual understanding of each other's realities will lead to more collaboration. And that is crucial because science must be at the heart of all the policies we debate in this House. Today, I had the opportunity to discuss French language science and rural research funding with Simon Girard, a professor at the Université du Québec à Chicoutimi and Canada Research Chair for Genetics and Genealogy. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to thank delegates. Parliament is their home, and the door of the Bloc Québécois will always be open.
Oh, nice. The door of the Bloc Québécois is always open, folks.
From Brantford, Brant. After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. This Prime Minister must put a full stop to the legalization of hard drugs like fentanyl, meth, and crack to other cities like Toronto after the failures in British Columbia. The Liberals can accuse us of politicizing, but they're the ones treating Canadians' lives as pawns in their wacko drug experiment. The most vulnerable Canadians deserve hope and treatment, not more taxpayer-funded hard drugs. Canadians have two choices. They can side with Conservatives in the fight to ban hard drugs and offer recovery for those battling addiction, or legalize smoking meth and fentanyl in parks around kids with this wacko NDP Liberal government. Only common sense Conservatives will end this wacko and deadly experiment. Let's bring our loved ones home.
See if Randy Boissonneau is in the House and stands up today to be recognized. Mr. Kickback.
Order.
The Honourable Member Alfred Pellon. Mr. Speaker, today I pay tribute to an exceptional group of young athletes from Laval who brought home the gold medal at the Copa Surf New England tournament.
I just want to see if
on March
Stephen
10th.
Gilbo is wearing his dandy-looking pink
Alexis,
jacket
Ahmed,
today,
Adriano,
and he's
Damian,
going to the
Johnny,
discotheque.
Gilas,
'Cause
Jacob,
remember what I told you
Giuliano,
yesterday
Ken,
about
Kevin,
Stephen
Kwasu,
Boissonneau. Stephen
London, Lucas,
Gilbo.
Mohammed, and Nicholas.
It's Randy Boissonneau and
Led
Stephen
by their
Gilbo. Birds of a feather,
coaches,
though.
Michael and Santino de Seta and
In
Anita
some ways.
Rinaldi, these young people demonstrated that hard work and teamwork are the keys to success. Their commitment and discipline are life lessons
Let's keep
that will
building
prepare
those
them
numbers,
to become
folks.
the leaders of tomorrow. Congratulations to the AS Laval U11 team for this remarkable victory. You have done Laval proud, and you are the very image of the values that we hold dear. Congratulations again for this incredible victory. Thank you.
Oral questions. Questions orales.
Here we go.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Le Conseil municipal.
The Mayor and City Council of Montreal have requested legalization of hard drugs in their communities.
Incredible.
Will the Prime Minister openly acknowledge the deadly mistake that legalizing hard drugs was in BC, or is he going to try to repeat this problem in Montreal? The Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, BC requested a pilot project and we worked with them. We agreed to amend the deal with them to better meet their needs. And we will always be there to work respectfully and with respect for science with our partners. But we weren't going to go
Any
ahead with
wackos in
any
town.
project without the support of the provinces involved. And the leader of the opposition knows that full well, but he keeps on his ideological path like Stephen Harper, even though that was rejected as immoral and obsolete. The honorable leader of the opposition.
Minister, believe in the decriminalization of crack in children's parks, meth smoking in hospitals, or other hard drugs on public transit? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we believe in working with British Columbia and with any province that wants us to work with them on this, which is why we accepted their request to modify their pilot project on exactly those issues. This is something we will continue to do, to work in a basis of science around compassion and a medical approach, a health approach, not a criminal justice approach to dealing with the toxic drug supply and addictions. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we won't be taking lessons from the Conservatives that continue to chase after a Harper-era policy that their own advisors said was obsolete.
All right, Kay, I got to do a show on this because you're right. They're all ignoring it.
Question, Mr. Speaker, because we need to know what he's going to do next. I just gave him a chance to indicate whether he believes people should be allowed to smoke crack in children's soccer fields or meth in the faces of nurses in hospital rooms. He refused to answer, which begs the question of whether or not he will try to impose the same radical and extremist policy elsewhere. So once again, does he believe that people should be allowed to smoke meth or crack in children's soccer fields?
Seems like a simple question to me.
Prime Minister.
Speaker, obviously no one in this House does. That is why we agreed with the British Columbia government to modify their pilot project to better suit their concerns. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we've seen the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will continue to try and use tragedies and ongoing challenges Canadians and vulnerable people are facing to try and score political points. It's the same reason he's said that he will suspend people's fundamental rights and freedoms to score cheap political points. That is not something that Canadians want to see, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister legalized the use of hard drugs like meth, crack, and heroin in children's parks and in hospitals, and he won't rule out doing it again. This is not an academic question. The City of Toronto submitted a 153-page application, and I quote, seeking an exemption under Section 56.1 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act that would decriminalize personal possession of illicit substances within Toronto's boundaries. The Prime Minister's government has been working secretly with Toronto on that plan ever since. Will he, yes or no, rule out decriminalization in Canada's biggest city?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see the Leader of the Opposition trying to score cheap political points on the backs of vulnerable people to promote an ideology that does not work. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to be there with a thoughtful, compassionate-based public health approach on the toxic drug supply, and that means working with jurisdictions. When Vancouver asked us for an exemption, we said no. We would only work with the province, and that's what we did to work with BC. The same thing when it comes to Ontario or Quebec. We will only work with the provinces to ensure any projects they have go.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So he refuses to rule out repeating this disastrous experiment that killed 2,500 British Columbians, because he strongly supports decriminalization. And if he got a chance, he would do it all over again in Toronto, in Montreal, and anywhere else. Mr. Speaker, the final question, therefore, is even the radical NDP government in BC asked for him to reverse his decriminalization. Why did it take him 10 days and 66 more deaths to do it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will make political attacks on the backs of the most vulnerable people in this country. We actually only received the completed request from British Columbia Friday last week, and approved it the following Monday, 3 days later, Mr. Speaker. We will always respond quickly in a science-based way when people's lives are on the line. The Leader of the Opposition is continuing to spread falsehoods, Mr. Speaker, instead of actually following the facts and caring for Canadians.
So why are the Conservatives wrong in their ideology? What's wrong about wanting it that way?
Mr. Speaker,
Oh,
the Liberals
blockheads. We're just
have
getting
a hard
good.
time believing their own commitment
This
to
guy's
the
a
French
parasite.
language. It's in their culture.
Just
the
keep
Prime
the
Minister
language politics
is
going.
responsible for allowing his members to
What a waste of space
play
this
such
man is.
dangerous
Complete
games
waste
with
of
our
space.
national language. Will the Prime Minister at least
What national language? You don't
request
believe
the
in a nation.
member that the member
Oh,
step down
yes.
from
Oh, sorry.
the
Your nation is
Association
Quebec.
of the
That's right.
Francophonie, the Right Honourable Prime Minister? Mr. Speaker,
What an excuse. These
defending
both
of
of
our
these
official
people are just
languages
wasting,
is a
taking
fundamental
up space
pillar
in the
of the
House of
Liberal
Commons. That's
Party
what they're
of
doing.
Canada's policy. And we were the first to recognize that the federal government also has a specific responsibility for protecting French.
Yeah, let's see how
even
long he lasts
within
today
Quebec.
before he walks
We
out.
will always be there
Next round
to
with
defend
Poilievre.
the
Anybody
French
want to
language
venture?
and to defend language minorities
Next
all
round
across
with
the country.
Poilievre.
I understand
Justin
that the
will
Bloc
flee.
keeps trying to pick fights. Sometimes they manage to pick one, but
He's
we are going
such a
to
disgrace.
continue to fight every day for official language minorities. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly.
What a country. We got a jackass like this sitting in the House of Commons.
Is really unaware of the political cost of his last answer.
Separatist dog
the
picking up a
member
paycheck,
who is the
getting a pension
chair of the Francophonie
for trying to break up a
Association
country.
should step down.
He's an
and
absolute swine.
has refused to apologize for what he said.
You should
in his
apologize for
opinion,
being in the House of Commons.
Those
You should
defending French are
apologize for having
extremists,
anything to do with federal
and
politics.
It shows
Go back to
extreme
Quebec,
contempt.
be
Will
a
the Prime
provincial
Minister
politician.
call on the member in question to step down?
I'm
from
just so
his
sick of the
position?
Bloc
The
taking up
member for
any seats in the House of
Prescott
Commons.
Russell should step down. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a proud partner in the Francophonie, and we show that. Unlike the Bloc, we stand for protecting French all across the country. We're not just isolating Quebec. We're recognizing that the French language needs support and protection all across the country. And yes, sometimes we might get a little excited about it, but we're not trying to pick fights. We're always there to defend minority communities, and we will show leadership all across the world as a proud member of the Francophonie. The Honourable Member
What a
for
series
New
of
Westminster
wasted
Burnaby.
questions.
The Liberals hold things up and the Conservatives block them. Everything's more expensive for
No
people.
jughead
Thanks
today.
to the NDP,
Well,
free
jug meat.
diabetes drugs will help lower costs for millions of people all across the country. It's shameful that the Conservative leader would take that all away from people. The Conservatives want more money in the pockets of Big Pharma and less in the pockets of Canadians. Will the government work with us to defeat this cruel Conservative attempt to block free diabetes drugs? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we're very pleased to work with whomever in the House to ensure Canadians no longer have to choose between groceries and medications. Yes, we're moving ahead with free diabetes drugs, but perhaps
It's
today
just like
we
what the
learned
Democrats are
why
doing
the
in the
Conservatives
States.
are so
Free
fiercely
insulin.
opposed, and that's because their
Free birth
anti-choice
control.
leader is allowing anti-choice members to vote against
That's what these morons
contraceptives
think
and
people are waiting for.
the morning after pill.
These
We need to
because as far
continue
as
to fight hard
these
against that agenda.
Jackasses are concerned. All Canadians
The
are just
honourable
waiting
member
for their
from
free
Winnipeg Centre.
insulin shots
Mr.
and their
Speaker,
free birth
Canadians
control.
will not have free diabetes and birth control if it was
Ah!
up to the Conservative
I
leader.
just said
and
that.
The Liberals, they keep delaying protecting women's rights. Reproductive rights are human rights, which includes barrier-free access to birth control.
That's not a human right,
Unfortunately,
lady.
This Conservative leader, once again, is attacking reproductive rights by blocking
What the hell is a
access to free
reproductive right? It's a
contraception.
euphemism for
Will
killing the
Liberals
unborn, right?
help us stop
State
the
it plainly, you
Conservative leader
moron.
and his anti-choice agenda and their efforts to deny free birth
All
control.
euphemism. You talk in riddles and euphemisms, and you talk crazy because you're as
We're
nuts
happy
as
to
Trudeau.
work with everyone in this house to stand
Oh,
against
work with
the leader of the
everyone, Justy
opposition's
boy.
anti-choice position and his anti-choice party. We saw yet again today one of his anti-choice members putting forward an anti-abortion narrative. The reality is, Mr. Speaker,
narrative.
we are delivering prescription contraceptives for Canadians right across the country. We'll deliver diabetes medication for Canadians right across the country for free. We're happy to work with the NDP and anyone in this house who wants to stand up for Canadians and for women's rights unequivocally.
I want to know how diabetes got mixed up with birth control with these scoundrels. I mean, this is how bizarre is our politics
The honourable
becoming?
member from Thornhill.
If you're under 30 in Canada, it's nothing but doom and gloom, according to Bloomberg Nanos. Gen Z's confidence in their pocketbooks is at the same level that it was in the first months of the pandemic. That's a 16-year low. The budget they said was about generational fairness has turned out to be a monumental failure. Instead, young Canadians keep getting higher spending, higher inflation, and higher interest rates, and they get nothing for it. The Prime Minister was voted in by young Canadians. Why won't he admit that he's destroyed their future? Step aside and let Conservatives fix everything he broke.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker,
There
our
she
budget
is.
about generational fairness and investing in young Canadians, investing in the housing, in the affordability and the economic growth that they urgently need. But you know what else young Canadians need, especially young Canadian women? That is control over their bodies. You get that control with free prescription contraceptives.
Oh.
The Conservatives are voting against our budget because they don't believe that a young woman should control her life and her body. We won't let them do that.
How crazy is this broad? I mean, what a stupid thing to say.
Certain all members would like to hear.
That's why the Conservatives are voting against this budget, because it's got free contraceptives. This woman is just completely nonsensical.
From Thornhill.
So
Excuse me for using the word
cherry-picking
broad.
data, misinformation, and lecturing Canadians, telling them that they're wrong. That
Frank
is a
Sinatra
choice,
moment.
Mr.
Okay.
Speaker. Millennials are telling this government that they can't pay their rent, that they can't pay for groceries, that they can't get to work. Even the bank governor confirmed
get
that
real.
$61 billion in new spending is, quote, not helpful when it comes to bringing down inflation and interest rates. When will the Deputy Prime Minister stop her inflationary spending so that young people stand a chance in this country?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
I notice, Mr. Speaker, that the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party did not clarify her own position on a woman's right to choose. Canadian women deserve
He doesn't have to
know.
worry about it.
And you know what? They can't trust any of these Conservatives to actually tell the truth, because the Governor of the Bank of Canada, in fact, said our budget was helpful because we stuck to our fiscal guardrails. That is what he said, Mr. Speaker, despite Conservative attempts to portray it otherwise.
The Honourable Member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, interest on our national debt is more than we spend on health care. The Prime Minister is spending more money lining the pockets of wealthy bankers and bondholders than making sure Canadians get the health care they need. On Thursday, the bank governor told the Finance Committee that government spending was not helpful in bringing down inflation, and interest rates. When will the Prime Minister finally start listening, get spending under control to bring down inflation and interest rates?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yet again,
Mr. Speaker.
just basic disinformation from the Conservatives. What the Governor of the Bank of Canada said to the Finance Committee last week, and I quote, speaking about our budget,
She read that
I
yesterday.
don't expect it is going to have a significant macro impact relative to our previous fiscal forecast. He said that meeting the fiscal guardrails is helpful. And Mr. Speaker, Moody's has reaffirmed our AAA rating. These are not partisans. Our budget is fiscally responsible. They're simply not telling the truth.
The Honourable Member from Charleswood St. James.
Petulant woman.
Headingley.
The Prime Minister is just not worth the cost of housing. On Thursday, the Bank Governor also told the Finance Committee that housing will continue to be unaffordable into the future. After 9 years, the Prime Minister has destroyed the dream of home ownership in this country. Sure, they talk a big game, spending billions, but the results are double trouble. Housing prices double, mortgage payments double, rents double. Can't they just get out of the way before things double again?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, it's difficult to accept criticisms from the Conservative Party when it comes to housing when both their record and their plan demonstrate they have no interest in solving the housing crisis. They're now campaigning on a commitment to cut funding for the programs that actually support home construction. They're campaigning on a commitment to raise taxes on new apartment construction that's going to help make sure apartments are available at prices that people can actually afford. And if you look at the record of the Conservative leader while he had the responsibility for
6 homes built, I know.
he got a total of 6 affordable housing units built across the entire country.
Who believes this crap?
Then I have the
Honourable Member for
This guy's swinging his arms around. 6 homes built.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Capital F
After
failure.
9 years of this Liberal government, Canadians just can't cope. The Governor of the Bank of Canada says this Prime Minister's reckless spending is making it hard to lower interest rates. Canadians are struggling to feed and house themselves, and the Bloc keeps encouraging the Prime Minister to waste their money. When will this Bloc-backed Prime Minister stop impoverishing Canadians with his inflationary policies and devastating spending? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy to hear my colleague from Lévis talking about housing. The good news is, or the right answer is, that the Conservatives built a total of 6 housing units during their entire term all across the country. The good
They're
news is,
sticking with
thanks
that
to
line.
our work, is that there are 205 affordable units that have been built in her riding in recent months. That's great news for the member, but not so good for the Conservative leader as former housing minister. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis.
I want to see the employment
It's
minister.
disappointing to see how out of touch they are. Quebecers are faced with humiliating choices: food or housing, toilet paper or toothpaste, soap or deodorant. Mr. Speaker, this is 2024. In a country like Canada, Quebecers and Canadians deserve better. The Bloc and the Prime Minister are not worth the cost. Can they show a little humanity toward Quebecers?
Is
and
this woman
stop
in the right
forcing
party?
hunger, homelessness, and poverty on them? They're laughing on the other side, Mr. Speaker. It's shameful. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Mr. Speaker,
Oh, no.
it's incredible to hear my colleague on the other side who can't even support our budget. It's not complicated. Their approach is cut, 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 cut to dental care, cut to help for families and children, cuts to seniors, chop, 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 Mr. Speaker. That's all they know how to do.
Oh, they like that one. Yeah, she's a real clown.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, they just can't help themselves. Yesterday in committee, the Liberals showed what they really think about protecting the French language. According to the Liberals, people who are concerned about the Anglicization of Montreal are extremists, who deserve crude insults that don't need repeating here. That's how the Liberals treated witnesses yesterday who were talking about the future of French. Is that the government's
That's all these
official position,
buffoons can talk
or
about.
was
It's
the
the
member
future
just
of
saying
French.
out loud what many Liberals are secretly thinking?
God, it
The
must
Honourable
be.
Minister of Employment.
Must be awful to go through
Mr.
life and be
Speaker,
obsessed with the
as my
language like
colleague
that.
knows full well, French is in decline all across Canada, including in Quebec. This is an issue we
There's
take
the
very
culprit.
seriously. Our government was the first federal government to recognize the decline of French all across Canada.
Hey, Randy,
Mr.
sign
Speaker,
any checks lately?
as a proud Franco-Albertan, we are there to promote
Deplorable,
French all
man.
across the country and in Quebec, period. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Yesterday's insults send quite a message to Quebecers.
Quite a message.
So the Liberals, if you're concerned about the future of French in Quebec, you're an extremist and you deserve to be insulted. But yesterday's discussion was actually about data from
Being suppressed
StatsCan.
big
They're not
time
extremists,
today.
but their numbers are extremely worrying for the future of our national language. So the people who care about French in Quebec are full of just one thing, actually, common
BS.
sense.
Yeah.
What's the Liberals' problem?
Hey, folks,
with
we're
the
being
future
suppressed
of
mightily
French in
today.
Quebec?
Wow. Must have been that
The
episode on
Honourable
Ukraine.
Minister of Foreign
YouTube
Affairs.
does not like talking
Mr.
about
Speaker.
Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They should stop tearing up their shirts about the future of French, because the Liberal country has been clear
Look at the size
for
of
a
that
long
belt.
time about that. We will stand to protect French in Quebec and all across the
That's
country.
ridiculous.
And not only as a government here in Canada, unlike what the Conservatives might say, we're also doing it internationally.
Well, at least she hasn't packed down 30
And
pounds
we
like
have a
the rest of
Canadian
them
in
in the
charge
front bench.
of the Association of the Francophonie.
That's the
and we're
nicest
very
thing I can
proud
say about
of
Melanie
the member
Joly.
of
She's
Glengarry
totally unqualified
for
to be a
Glengarry,
minister at
Prescott
all,
Russell. We're
especially
very
a
proud
minister of
his
foreign
work.
affairs. I wonder where old Jagmeet is
Order,
today.
please.
Or sorry, Jagmeet, yes. Maybe he's out buying a new suit. He only owns one suit in Ottawa, apparently. That's all he ever wears in question
The
period.
Honourable
Is a
Member for La
double-breasted
Pointe de l'Île.
suit.
This isn't the
banker's
first
suit.
time the Liberals have gone off script.
Is this Yahoo
Remember the
up
member
again?
for Saint Laurent who claimed Bill 96 would prevent Anglophones from getting health care in Quebec, or the members from the West Island who threatened to vote against their own official
All right, we
languages
gotta see
reform if it
if the
gave
Justice
French more
bald
protection
spot,
in Quebec.
Varane. If Varane's bald
Or the
spot
Liberals'
getting any
pride
larger?
in all their
Seems to every
unilingual
week,
English
so
appointments.
He's
The
gonna look like
same
a monk
Liberals
very
who
soon.
appointed a Governor General who still doesn't speak French.
And then it's going to
Why
start
are the
to spread
Liberals
to the
so hostile toward protecting French?
These people are such clowns. You know, you laugh at them on both sides of the aisle, especially these blockheads. Are just incredible. They've got nothing to say, nothing to add to the national
Honourable
debate.
Minister of Transport, Mr. Speaker.
And speaking of
I'm
clowns,
not sure what is the problem with the member opposite, but our colleague is a proud defender of French, not just in Quebec.
they found
but all
Pablo
across
living
Canada,
under a
whereas
bridge.
the
Did you know that?
Bloc couldn't
He was
give a
living under a
hoot
bridge in
about
Montreal. And Trudeau
We
reached out
have
to him saying, you know, you would make an excellent
financed
cabinet minister
the protection of French to the highest
because
level
I
of any
need you in
government,
my
and the Bloc
cabinet.
has
We need
consistently
diversity.
voted against it. They're
So
voting
that's how
against
Pablo
what we're
got
doing, whereas we
to
have
this
our
cabinet.
benches standing up for French all across Canada.
Oh, what a waste of time. What a waste of time these people are.
Honourable Member for
And you know-
Lévis-Lapinière. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the Prime Minister and the Bloc aren't worth it.
Okay,
the more the
come on,
government
Jacques.
spends, backed by the Bloc,
Let's
the
have a
more
real
Quebecers
question.
struggle. The housing crisis will soon force Canadians
Come on,
to
Jacques.
live through no fault of their own in their minivans as a last resort, not as their retirement dream. Mr. Speaker, when will this Prime Minister, backed by the Bloc, with $500 billion in budget appropriations, when will they stop
Nothing
wasting
about
money
the WHO
so
treaty.
Quebecers can once again live with dignity under the roof of a house, not of their minivans?
It's all about houses and cars. They don't
Once
seem to think.
Again, I'd like to encourage all members to remain silent
And-
when a member is asking a question And obviously, when
Nothing
the answer
about
is given,
the fact
Honourable
we're
Minister
weeks
of
away from a
Innovation,
nuclear war.
Mr. Speaker,
Don't talk about
Canadians
Ukraine
will
except
not be
how much we're going to
lectured
stand
by
with
the
them until the end of time.
Conservatives and their support for extremist groups in Canada. Canadians
Oh,
know
here
they're
we
a
go
party
again
with
with
no
diagonal
vision,
on.
no ambition, and no plan either for this country. Here on this side of the House, we know that we need to help families.
Yeah,
We need to
Trudeau's
invest
gone
in
again.
housing. But you know what?
Told you he would.
People
He didn't
are
even.
seeing
He didn't
that
even
members
wait for
opposite
Poilievre to
have
get up
voted
again today.
against support for
What a
children,
coward!
for housing, and for investments in Quebec. It's shameful. Here on this side, we will always fight to improve Canadians' quality of living.
Look at these guys. They're just so sanctimonious,
The honourable
so
member for
self-righteous,
Lévis-Lapinière.
so
Mr.
convinced they have
Speaker,
something
the
worthwhile
Liberal
to
government
contribute,
hasn't built
and they have
any
nothing.
housing. They've just built more
Oh,
bureaucracy.
we're
With
just
500
losing
billion
numbers
in
today.
centralizing and inflationary spending that
Sometimes you
created
want to
this
give up.
cost of living crisis and the housing crisis we're currently in, Mr. Speaker, with thousands of Canadians in dire straits,
Yes, well,
will the
obviously
Prime Minister see
they're not
to
talking
it
about who
that
because they're all
housing
involved.
is
Yes,
built
we know that.
quickly? When you're at the point where you're sleeping in your van or your
It's
car,
still a scandal,
it's
though.
because this Prime Minister is asleep on the job.
Wow, that translator's with it today.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While my colleague practices his performance for Infoman, we are
Who is
doing what
Infoman?
needs doing.
Doing what needs doing. That
The
describes the Liberal
fund
policy
to help young
perfectly.
people save up for their first down payment.
Because it means nothing.
650,000 young people have signed up for that, and they've saved $2.6 billion that way. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this government, Canada's housing crisis has only gotten worse. The dream of buying a home is dead for an entire generation. Proof that the Bloc and this Prime Minister aren't worth the cost. In Beauce, families lucky enough to have affordable housing still have to go to food banks to feed themselves, a 20% increase in use since the start of 2024. When will this Bloc-backed Prime Minister stop wasting money so Quebecers can find decent housing and food? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 6 units of affordable housing were built under the Conservative leader's
keep repeating
tenure
that?
as Minister of Housing. But I'm glad they asked that question because he's a former mayor of a municipality in Quebec, and the
6 is the magic number of booster shots we should have by now, according to this halfwit.
All Quebec municipalities incompetent.
It's amazing to me that government got away with this. I've lost a sister and now a cat.
Well, my colleague
to these
across the
damn
way
vaccines.
should come visit Beauce this weekend
These
and
mRNA
explain
vaccines.
that to our people. Now, the
And
more
I'm
this
fed up
government
and I'm
spends,
sick
the more
and I am
Quebecers are suffering.
furious
We're
with
talking
the
about
lies,
$500 billion in
deception,
centralizing and inflationary spending that is
antics
exacerbating the housing
from big
crisis.
pharma
While
and big
Quebecers
government.
are trying to survive, the Bloc Québécois has chosen to vote in favor of $500 billion in Liberal budget appropriations. That means they're voting for bureaucracy and for waste. When will this government get out of the way so that Conservatives can fix the budget and build the homes?
Yeah.
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party are using vulnerable Canadians for their own political purposes. That's not
Good for you,
acceptable.
Laurie.
Mr. Speaker, through our national housing strategy, we are creating over 150,000 more units of affordable housing. Now, just for comparison, Mr. Speaker, 6 units of affordable housing were built from coast to coast when the leader of the opposition was Minister of Housing. That was unacceptable. We are
I can't
investing
believe
in
they
building
actually
affordable
believe
housing in
that.
Quebec and elsewhere in
I
Canada.
keep repeating this line like it's
Once again, I
The
ask the
Poilievre
member
leave
for
too.
Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier and the member for Mégantic-L'Érable to please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking.
During the inquiry, concerns around the participation of busloads of Chinese foreign students and falsified documents for the Don Valley North nomination came to light. The commissioner noted that Chinese foreign interference activities could
this
have
is
made
not
a
a bad
difference
question.
on who was nominated in Don Valley North. The Chinese media reported that the nomination was won by 14 votes. The Prime Minister cannot continue to pretend there is nothing to see here. Based on the damning findings,
So that's a good
action
question.
will the Prime Minister take now?
Jenny Kwan actually has been pretty good on the Chinese election interference file for a New Democrat. She's been pretty good.
The Honourable Minister for
Because,
Public Safety.
Jagmeet doesn't want to talk about it.
Mr. Speaker, I thank our colleague for the question, and far from not taking this matter seriously, our government has done the exact opposite. Our colleague knows well we have put in place a series of measures now over a number of years to deal with the very real threat that she identified of the Chinese government seeking to interfere in the democratic process in Canada. All political parties, and not just at the federal level, Mr. Speaker, face this threat. That's why yesterday, for example, we introduced important legislation in this House, and we look forward to working with colleagues to hopefully pass it quickly.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
People in Nunavut pay hundreds of more dollars in shipping fees than the rest of Canada. Amazon charged a Pangnaktok resident over $700 in shipping fees. This is unacceptable. The Liberals are catering to ultra-rich corporations by allowing this. Nunavut needs a government that fights to take on Amazon's corporate greed. Why is this government okay with Nunavut paying hundreds more in shipping fees to go to basic goods?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Northern
She has the
Affairs.
same question every day.
Speaker, and I thank the member for a very important question.
Very
we
important.
realize that the price of food is too expensive in Nunavut. That's why we've invested close to $150 million in the Nutrition North program, including
I've never seen this guy stand up before.
for the Harvester Support Grant, $15 million for the community foods programs. We have $1 billion for the school foods programs, which will benefit Northerners in Nunavut. We are committed to working with the member and with the Nunavut government to make sure we make progress on this very important issue.
L'honorable député de Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Saint Laurent.
Made his position clear. If he is Prime Minister, he will pick and choose which rights and freedoms Canadians can have. That's a slippery slope, Mr. Speaker. With the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the United States, est-ce que les femmes canadiennes doivent s'inquiéter de savoir?
Do Canadian women need to
we
be
got to do it
worried
in
about
English
whether
and
they'll be
French.
deprived of their right to choose?
Well, of course. Poilievre is just so pro-life.
Commitment to
What
defending
a
women's rights.
farce.
The Honourable Minister for Women
Idiot.
and Gender Equality.
Poilievre is on your side with abortion, you idiot.
Is unwavering, Mr. Speaker. We will always
They just
vigorously
talk
support a
shit. They
woman's
talk
right to
nonsense.
choose
I was gonna
her
say the
right to
wrong
have
word there.
autonomy over her own body. Conservatives say they will use any tools necessary when it comes to
Except when it comes to
criminal
COVID
justice.
vaccines, you
It wasn't long ago
half-witted
that abortion
excuse.
itself was a crime. We will not go back, Mr. Speaker, even though just this morning a Conservative MP reminded us the future they want for women in this country. On this side of the House, a woman's right to choose will never be up for debate.
Well, get off it. We get abortion on demand. It's unrestricted until the baby is born in this country. What else do you idiots, you fanatics, you extremists want?
The Honourable Member
A baby's
from
head on a
Kamloops,
platter
Thompson,
for you?
After 9 years,
You people
this
are disgusting.
Liberal Prime Minister is not worth
You
the
disgust
crime,
me,
chaos,
Liberals.
cost, or disorder. 66 people died on average while we waited for this Prime Minister to make a decision on BC's
Come on,
request.
get those numbers up.
The government dithered and people died. The government didn't even go as far as it could have in getting rid of its aggressive, radical, and wacko legalization of hard drugs. Why did it take this government so long to reverse its course on legalization, and will it promise never to do it again?
No, it's a pilot project. So you have to get that
Of
right.
course, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister dealt with that thoroughly earlier in this question period, and we've amended our arrangement with British
Yes, I'm
Columbia.
on fire.
But that member
The
needs
smoke
to
is
answer
coming.
a very important question. The leader of the opposition has now vowed to have an a la carte Charter of Rights where today he will decide what rights to have and what rights to not have. What will it be tomorrow,
That's not what he said.
Will it be women's reproductive rights? Will it be the right to a fair trial? Will it be the right to freedom of expression?
You're the one taking our freedom of expression away. Hey, halfwit, what is the notwithstanding clause doing in the Constitution if it's not to be used? You airhead. Not a single thought between your brain, in your brain, between your ears. Not a single thought.
After 9
Just talking
years,
points is all you're
this
capable
liberal
of.
NDP Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. Across British Columbia, there's people strung out on drugs, often comatose or dying. The legalization of fentanyl, meth, and crack has led to a tragic wave of death. The Liberals and NDP are panicking as their poll numbers drop.
The numbers dropping again.
Fed up. Deadly hard drugs will still be able to use
Fight
with
back
today's
against the
announcement.
YouTube
When will this
censorship.
Prime Minister stop tinkering and completely end his wacko drug experiment?
The Honourable Minister.
I think we've had enough questions on the drug. Why don't they talk about the WHO treaty? Why don't they talk about Boiscano's antics?
For the question, but I must remind him that question was already answered. And on this
They
side
have
of the House,
no
what we want to
objective
emphasize is that a woman's right
on the
to
conservative
choose
side.
and
With,
charter rights generally
and
are
Poilievre has
non-negotiable.
flown the coop
On
as
this
well.
side of the House, we will always protect the Charter of Rights of Freedom.
Something happened, folks. Something happened last week when he was kicked out.
We ask everybody in this House
Something
to vote in
happened.
favor of contraception for women so they have autonomy over their own bodies.
Oh, get off your autonomy over your own body. It is just such a simplistic, distorted talking
Mr. Speaker,
point.
after 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. The Liberal Minister responsible for the legislation of hard drugs like fentanyl, meth, and crack in British Columbia is still clinging to parts of the Liberals' wacko hard drug legislation experiment. Public open drug use is rampant in our streets. People are even afraid to take their dogs out to walk around their own neighborhoods. On what day will the Prime Minister completely end this failed radical drug policy?
Tammy Robinson, if you're from Perth, I would like to hear more about this story with your father,
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear.
and perhaps even
Today
interview
we
you or
said
your
yes
father
to
about this
BC's
for an
request
article for the
an amendment
Post-Millennial.
to their pilot project. The pilot
This is
program
interesting.
that BC asked the federal government to work with them with compassion, conviction, science, and health expertise, Mr. Speaker. BC knows perfectly well, as the advocates and families who are part of this project, that we need to have a public health and public safety approach to this to save lives.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, that minister is still supporting hard drug legalization, and here's how it's playing out in our communities. A resident from my community just told me about an incident she witnessed at a local clothing store where a man threatened the two ladies working there, screaming, stomping, and overturning displays. I was on the phone the other day with another resident who works at a street front office, and I could barely hear her due to the screaming just outside her window. And yet this minister clings to parts of her wacko legalization policy of fentanyl, meth, and crack. Again, on what day will the Prime Minister completely end this failed drug policy experiment?
Before we continue with the answer from the government House Leader, I'm going to ask the honourable member from Westminster Burnaby, please, to not comment while members are asking the question. He doesn't have the floor at this time. The honourable government House Leader.
Speaker, of course, the Minister and the Prime Minister have dealt with that question. But what is important is to review the past couple of weeks, a very disturbing trend in this country, Mr. Speaker, where the Leader of the Opposition has refused to disavow, to say it's unwelcome to have the support of white supremacists.
Oh, get the hell out of here.
I will make the laws and I will decide what rights exist in this country. What rights is he going to take away? What rights does he intend to take away? Is it women's reproductive rights?
You don't ask the questions, you halfwit. You're supposed to be answering questions, but you won't do that. And Poilievre has not said any of this. Anyone with half a brain knows this. He's merely said that notwithstanding clause can be used, and it's there to be used. These people are craven idiots. They're cowards. They don't know anything about the Constitution. I'm sure this idiot hasn't even read the Constitution or the Charter of Rights. He looks like he hasn't got two wits to rub together at the best of times. I mean, Steve McKinnon is an abomination. As a House leader, as an MP, as a human being. Tossing out these stupid accusations that he knows are outright lies.
When CBC Radio-Canada CEO Catherine Tate decided to cut 600 jobs
Boy, you
in the
get
fall,
sick of these
she wanted
lying,
to cut as many on the French side as on the English side without taking into account their respective performance or number of employees.
That masquerade as
now,
government
she's talking
leaders.
about combining the programming and management of CBC and Radio-Canada because she wants to use Radio-Canada as a shield against possible conservative cuts
We need a little
CBC.
more humor today, don't we?
Always in the best interest of CBC, never in the best interest of Radio-Canada. Is the minister also ready to sacrifice Radio-Canada's independence in order to preserve the CBC? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will repeat what I've been repeating since we started talking about this matter. French language programming and content will never be twinned with CBC.
I know Pascal's talking, but Tammy, I'm going to follow.
Independent.
Where are you here? My God, the comments are coming fast and loose now.
In Quebec and everywhere in Canada. On this side of the House, we will defend
Tammy,
our
I'm going to
public
follow up with
broadcaster
you
in Quebec and everywhere else in Canada.
after the show,
our public broadcaster
or later
is so
today, or
important,
maybe
especially
tomorrow
in these
about
times
this.
when
I'm not far from
institutions
you.
Are making cuts.
I live outside of Ottawa.
CBC and Radio-Canada are both essential in
if
Canada,
you're in
Mr.
Perth,
Speaker.
this would be an excellent opportunity.
Mr.
The
Speaker,
medical
the only thing
assistance
that
in
poses
dying
a
program
threat
is
to
one of my,
Radio-Canada
I hate to say
imminently
favorite,
is not
but
the
it's
election of
one
the
of the
Conservatives,
issues I
it's
love
the
to
CEO
talk
of
about
CBC
because I think it's
Radio-Canada,
emblematic
Catherine Tate,
of how
appointed
the
and
Liberal
extended by the
Party,
Liberals.
the Liberal
She's
government,
prepared to
and
sacrifice
increasingly
the
Canada
independence
has
of
a
the French
death
language
wish under
network
Justin
as a
Trudeau.
safeguard against a future
And I think
government.
this euthanasia program is
When we warn that this is a
is
slippery slope and
disgraced.
that we need to protect
And it's
Radio-Canada's
habitually
independence, the
being
minister
used,
tells
and I
us
hear
that we're
this from
going
other
after the
people,
CBC,
it's
just like
habitually
the
being
Conservatives
used
do. That's
as a
nonsense. So whose side is the minister on?
as an alternative to health care.
Radio-Canada's?
You don't get the health care you need, you can't get your cancer treated, we'll offer you euthanasia. That's how sick Trudeau is, that's how sick the government is, and how sick a lot of doctors are becoming in this country. They are murderous bastards.
We all agree on in this House. All parties
And
in this House
believe-
agree
and
except the Conservatives.
when my sister
Everyone in this House except
that's
for
the
the
first thing
Conservatives defends
I'm sure
a strong
they offered
Radio-Canada.
her. I couldn't find out because I wasn't on the scene, and she was gone in
We
72
also all depend a
hours of
strong
pneumonia,
CBC throughout
and
the
I
country
think that
with a
was
strong
related
financial
directly
situation. We're going to
to
continue
the
to
number
work
of
towards
shots
that.
she had gotten, the
Meanwhile,
vaccine
Conservatives
shots,
are
the
promising to
COVID-19
destroy our
vaccine
public
shots
broadcaster
she was
and
getting to
prevent
visit my
Canadians from
mother
having access
in a
to
nursing home in
information and to
Chilliwack,
quality
BC.
Canadian content. It's despicable, Mr. Speaker.
She was gone so fast, I didn't have a chance to get a plane ticket out to see her. But that mixes up COVID with MAID. But it's all, to me, emblematic
After
of how
9 years,
sick
does
this
the
government
Prime
is.
Minister care
Better shut
that
up.
42,000 Canadians have died from drug overdose? Taxpayer-funded supply of hard drugs has destroyed lives. Addiction workers confirm that most users of so-called safe supply are diverting these drugs into the hands of organized crime. Criminals are selling these drugs to children. Overdose is the #1 cause of death in 10 to 17-year-olds in BC. When will this Prime Minister end this dangerous drug trafficking experiment that profits Big Pharma and kills children?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that question has been asked and answered. But I'll tell you
I'm from
been
Comox,
answered, Mr.
British
Speaker,
Columbia,
that
actually,
deeply
KS.
concerns
Or
Canadians.
K5, sorry.
It is that over the past few weeks, we have seen the leader of the Conservative Party openly associate with white supremacists and refuse multiple opportunities to disavow their views. Then we saw him advocate an a la carte charter of rights. and
They're
say
calling
he
it an
would
a
pick
la
which
carte
rights
charter
people
of
have.
rights now.
And today we learned one right they do not support. A woman's right to choose. This is deeply concerning, Mr. Speaker. Canadians have a right to know.
And she knows Poilievre is on your side, is on her side. What a lying woman. What a lying liberal.
Relatively restrained. It's difficult for the
I don't
Speaker
agree with
to
Poilievre
hear
on
the
abortion,
answer if
but
the
at least I know
discussion
where
going
he
on.
stands on
People like to
abortion.
be very mindful in
And
terms of
Chrystia
what
Freeland
the
does
question is
too,
saying.
but she's lying because she's scoring the cheap political points as liberals do on the hour,
Well,
on the
Canadians
day.
have the right to know when the RCMP are sounding the alarm, why organized crime is getting their hands on these so-called safe supply drugs and diverting them. Thousands of these big pharma government pills have been seized. Organized crime is profiting from selling taxpayer-funded drugs to children. And no, this has not been answered yet today. But the NDP Liberal government is refusing to release the contracts that distribute these drugs. Canadians deserve to know how and why their money's being used. When will the Prime Minister release the big pharma contracts? Just the date, please.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that question has been asked and answered. But I'll tell you what the Conservatives really don't want to answer. They don't want to answer why their leader openly flirts with white supremacists and refuses several opportunities to disavow them. They don't want to answer why their leader openly talks about an a la carte charter of rights. And today
a la carte charter of rights.
Mr. Speaker, that one of the
openly
rights they're going to
flirts
take
with
away
white
is a woman's right
supremacists.
to choose. But we will not let them.
That witch can try her little incantations all day long.
Mr. Speaker, hard drug use has become commonplace in the Montreal Metro. There's assault, drug use, and homelessness, and it's a scourge in the Metro. Riders feel unsafe. It's as if everything that's happening on the surface, the housing crisis, inflation, the opioid crisis, mental health problems, is causing repercussions in Montreal's underground. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that he will ignore the Bloc's calls and not decriminalize hard drugs in Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Global Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, colleagues have asked this question countless times, and it's been answered countless times. The Leader of the Opposition won his leadership race by ensuring that he had the votes of Maxime Bernier supporters and extreme right supporters, as well as those who are against abortion. Those people voted for him. Now he refuses to
Is Maxime Bernier now a white supremacist? You
and their ideas.
They're all harping on the same crap.
And one of
because they can't do any better.
Is in fact making anti-abortion
this
statements
woman,
right here.
This woman hasn't got the intelligence to be a travel agent, but she thinks she's a Minister of Foreign Affairs.
This is a
Thinks she
mental health
is.
week, and in a rapidly changing world, strong mental supports for youth is essential. By working with my youth council and stakeholders, I know mental health challenges
What kind of a
faced by young
softball is
people.
this one?
There are many organizations doing incredible work to make sure youth do not fall through
Can
the
the
cracks.
minister tell us the astounding work he's doing?
Addiction, tell us what we are doing to support community organizations across the country in delivering more mental health care options for youth.
Good question.
Oh yeah, that's a ring dinger of a
Thank
question.
the honourable member for her question. Yes, Mr. Speaker, youth are facing real challenges right now at home, in school, and as they start their careers. Their mental health can suffer, and community organizations like the South Asian Canadian Health and Social Services in the members' riding are such a lifeline for support. We're creating a first of its kind
this is
youth
the drug king, queen pin.
more mental health supports
The
and
drug
care
czar.
choices for youth and communities across this country.
She changed her clothes
we know
today.
They need it. We
Busting
will be
out of
there
that
for them.
suit, Bill.
We're investing in Kids Help Phone and the Mental Health Black Canadians Fund because we know we need to meet people where they are. Mental health is health.
What a collection of charlatans we have running our country.
Speaker, at committee, the Minister of Employment claimed that he had been
Give
cleared
it
by
to
the
him.
Ethics Commissioner to receive payments from Navis Group, a firm owned by his business partner that was lobbying his own department, except that that isn't true. The Office of the Ethics Commissioner has indicated that they were unaware of the minister's connection to Navis Group. So why did the minister claim that he was cleared when clearly he had not been cleared? Why did the minister mislead committee?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the minister has answered these questions many times, and the minister, of course, complies with all of the very stringent
No, he hasn't answered any questions about it. Not in the House of Commons, he hasn't.
That member needs to answer is how will he approach this new a la carte rights campaign by the leader of the opposition. Which
Distraction,
rights
distraction,
in the Charter of
distraction.
Rights, 42 years old, Mr. Speaker, is this member intending to take away? We know the Conservatives have always hated the Charter of Rights, Mr. Speaker. Which rights will they be taking away?
Excellent.
Yeah, Cooper. I like Michael Cooper. He's a friend.
Mr. Speaker, the minister actively concealed his connection to Navis Group, hiding behind a numbered company. As a result, the ethics commissioner could not have known that the minister's business partner was lobbying his own department. If there are no ethical issues with the minister's connection to Navis Group, as the minister claims, then why did he hide it from the ethics commissioner?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are quite understandably taking this very red herring to try and distract from a very bad couple of weeks. What they have done is refused.
You've had a very bad couple of years. What's been so bad about the last couple of weeks for the Conservatives? The fact the Speaker is in the pocket of Justin Trudeau and threw Poilievre out of the House of Commons. Does that make a bad week for you, Steve McKinnon?
His question. He's about 24 seconds left on the clock.
The Conservatives are quite understandably trying to distract from the fact that they refused to tell white supremacists that their support is unwelcome in the Conservative Party. They're trying to distract from the fact, Mr. Speaker, that they have always hated the Charter of Rights. They have always hated a woman's right to choose. They have always hated the right to free expression in this country. They need to stand up and explain themselves.
What a halfwit. He doesn't even qualify as a halfwit. Quarterwit, maybe?
Behold, the ghost of Paul Martin is back. When a government is drowning, they will grasp onto anything, but they continue to sink nonetheless. Now, Mr. Speaker, 6 years ago, the House and the government voted to list the IRGC as a terrorist organization and therefore prevent them from fundraising, recruiting, or operating in Canada. 6 years later, this terrorist group continues to operate here with impunity. Tomorrow, the House will vote again. Will this NDP Liberal government finally do what they failed to do 6 years ago and vote to shut down IRGC operations in Canada?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, decisions to list certain entities on the terrorist listing under Canada's Criminal Code are made based on the advice of security and intelligence services. We do acknowledge, and I think all Canadians understand, that the Iranian regime is one of the worst state sponsors of terrorism. We have taken a number of measures to deal with leaders in the Iranian regime, and we're always looking, Mr. Speaker, at what further steps we can take to protect Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Scarborough H.
Yes, here. Where is that?
Speaker, we have launched and improved immigration pathways for Hong Kongers to make it easier for them to stay and work in Canada. However, applicants are at risk of falling out of status as they await a decision on their PR application. Canada has always stood shoulder to shoulder with the people of Hong Kong. What is our government doing to help them get out of precarious situations?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees,
Zarn
and
is
Citizenship.
an idiot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want
To be sending more money to Ukraine, more weapons. He is a complete airhead on this file. I don't give a damn what party he belongs to. I don't care what side of the House he's on. I don't care if he's an opposition MP. I don't care if he's a Conservative MP. He is dead wrong on this, and he's an idiot to be backing this bill. They are in lockstep with the Liberal government on Ukraine, and they're marching us all to nuclear war.
Continue to stand with the people
So,
of Hong Kong.
whatever the hell his last name, he can go to hell on this one.
The Honourable Member from the Nanaimo Ladies.
He's no genius, let me tell you that.
Despite Liberal promises to get open net fish farms full of Atlantic salmon out of West Coast waters, the minister sits idly by. To make matters worse, consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments have been muzzling scientists whose findings show the extent of the damages. It's not surprising to learn that the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner is now investigating more gross allegations.
Not
Will the
another
Liberals
cent for
cooperate,
Ukraine.
Publish scientists' findings, and finally put
It is
coastal
the black
communities
hole of
ahead
Kiev.
of corporate profits.
The Honourable Minister.
All this guy wants to know is your fucking
to developing a responsible transition plan for open net aquaculture. We continue to work on a transition plan that protects Pacific salmon while providing support to workers and their communities and advancing reconciliation.
Yeah, read your script, lady.
Fisheries and Ocean Canada, along with my office, continue to have constructive conversation with stakeholders and regarding next steps. Thank you.
That was so eloquent.
The honourable member from Churchill, Kiwatanuk-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, this government is always ready to take a dive for big cities, but refuses to pass the ball to Indigenous and Northern youth, giving $104 million for 6 games of the FIFA World Cup in Toronto, but not making room for soccer in Indigenous and Northern communities is offside. In regions like ours, soccer is more than a game. It's a life-saving pass for kids. Canada has a responsibility to include
that should be an
all our
SO
youth in the
31
lead up to
member
the
statement.
2026 World Cup, or we'll get a red card. So, Mr. Speaker, when will this government stop dribbling the ball in circles and find a way to include Indigenous and Northern youth as we all host soccer on the world stage?
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, Brian.
Speaker,
So we see eye to eye on that
an
one.
investment of $220 million to host the FIFA World Cup games in Vancouver.
Yeah, we're all pissed with Garnet.
This will generate economic impact, Mr. Speaker, of $2 billion for our country. That's a return on that investment, Mr. Speaker.
Well done. And so brings to the end of question period today, and I know all members will be very interested in this. I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of the
Another Nazi there?
for the 2024 Shaughnessy Cohen Prize.
No, I guess not. Not today. No Nazis today. All right. Thanks for watching today. I think we finally got some numbers at the end there, but it's always gratifying to read your comments and to see you people are so engaged in politics. I know it's difficult. Sometimes it's like having your teeth pulled watching question period. It's frustrating, but we got to keep on top of this stuff because we are being sold to the globalists, not just by the liberals, but as a lot of you pointed out, Garnet Genesis's bill on Ukraine is a farce. It is a piece of crap. It is just more globalist nonsense. And it's just feeding in to the liberal NDP coalition. And the conservatives should be ashamed that they're in lockstep on, we're with Ukraine to the end. It's over for Ukraine. I've already said that at the beginning. It's over. The war is over. Russia is about to declare victory. And NATO is about to send troops to Ukraine. And we're going to be at war. And yeah, Canada too, because we're a member of NATO, one of the founding members of NATO. This is an organization that is a club of fools now. It has no raison d'etre that makes any rational sense anymore. It has no political or moral or military objective that is valid or clear or makes any sense. It's time to disband NATO. It's time to get rid of this organization that just sucks in more and more countries. And the more countries that belong to this club of fools, the more likely we are to have a war because somebody's going to make a stupid mistake. Somebody's borders are going to be transgressed. One of these countries is going to go into Ukraine and fight Russia, and we're all going to be involved. This is a fool's mission, but people like Garnet are making it even more foolish. And the Conservative Party is as guilty of this as the Liberals are. And I'm not going to excuse them. I'm not going to say, well, we have to understand what they're up to. We have to understand this is all politics. I don't understand. I never did, and I never will. And now I can say so. Thanks for watching today, folks. It's always a pleasure. I'll be back tomorrow with more.